Welcome to the Patriots Pulse postgame show. I'm your host, John Sarianides, and as always, I'm joined by my partners, John Lyons and Kevin Stone. Gentlemen, how are you this evening?
Doing John, I'm doing okay. Probably doing better if the Patriots were not playing Thursday Night Football this week, and we didn't have to just watch that, though.
Yeah, I would agree. That was bad. That was one of the worst Patriot games I can remember in a long time. It's been a long time. Even last year, as bad as they were at times, and they had some bad ones last year. The New Orleans stinker, the Dallas stinker.
Yeah.
This one to me was on par with that. They were never really in this game. It felt very similar to those games. It just, for me, it's one of those things where, again, they are who we thought they were. I think that Cincinnati win gave us a little bit of a false sense of hope as to what they could be. They are who we thought they were, and that's not a very good football team. And Aaron Rodgers and company had their way with them tonight. It's the first time the Jets beat the Patriots at home since 2015, which speaks to the Jets' futility in recent years. I mean, the Patriots owned them for a long time. They were their bitch for a long time. But tonight they turned the tables on the Patriots. Let's get some early thoughts on this one, John. I'm going to start with you. Just some thoughts on what was an abysmal night for the New England Patriots.
Yeah, John, it sounds like a simple statement, but it's true in that just a lot of bad football, start to finish, top to bottom. I mean, not a good 5 days for Gerard Mayo. Patriots make a lot of critical mistakes against Seattle on Sunday, lose a game they could have won. Came out tonight, didn't love the offensive game plan. I mean, the Jets have a bad run defense, and the Patriots barely tried to run the ball. Too much play action early, and Brissett was just getting lit up. You have Caden Wallace at left tackle, and sometimes they gave him help, sometimes they didn't. And defensively, missed tackles left and right. I mean, Amazon had the stat of 13 missed tackles for 100 lost yards. I mean, the stat's great, but even just watch it. I mean, the first touchdown of the game, Alex Austin could have had the receiver down at the 9-yard line. Instead, missed tackle, touchdown. I mean, that was happening left and right. It's just, when you walk away from this game, and outside of Demario Douglas on offense, not really anything positive to take away. It's just bad football. So even I would say special teams wise, no glaring mistakes, but I mean, there's a couple missed tackles on some punt coverages. Jermichael Hasty caught a kick that I thought was going out of bounds and would have given the Patriots the ball at the 40. Instead, he catches it, tries to return it, and he's down at the 25. So, again, it's just like every phase of the game, there was just bad football, bad coaching, bad play. And not to say they can't correct some of this stuff, but just a bad night.
Yeah, John, you said it perfectly. Just looking at the numbers right now, 139 yards total for any NFL team. That's embarrassing. It's ineptitude is what it is. That's really the only word to describe it. I mean, 11 first downs, 48 total plays to 70 ran for Green Bay. Of Green Bay. I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers in my head, but he was, John, you saw him a lot. I thought he was vintage Aaron Rodgers tonight. He was picking them apart, particularly early on. He was cerebral, finding mismatches and just sort of spraying the ball all over the field. But yeah, the Patriots defense didn't help themselves one bit. And the scary part is the injuries are mounting now too. You saw Keon White go down late. Alex Austin went down late. Ramondre Stevenson got hurt with a dumb face mask that, you can argue whether it was, his fault or not. It is what it is. But ineptitude is the word that comes to mind. And I'm not sure it's getting any better anytime soon.
Yeah, and as always, I do want to remind you guys, if you are watching, we know you have plenty of post-game show options, but give us a watch. This is the show of the fans. Feel free to jump in the chat section and comment on tonight's game. Share your thoughts with us. As long as you don't make any stupid, threatening type comments, we'll put your comment on the screen and we'll let your voice be heard. Again, you are watching us live on Facebook, X, Twitch, and our YouTube channel. Yeah, I mean, look, I didn't think the Jets looked that good. I thought that I didn't think Rodgers was that great either. I thought he played well. I don't think he looked as great as Michaels and Herbstreit thought. I mean, look, the Patriots defense, I think coming into this season, we all said, okay, if there's one positive is that this defense is good enough, they will keep them in games. John, I agree with you wholeheartedly. They have been awful the last 2 weeks. Miscommunication, missed run fits, bad angles in pursuit, bad tackling. I mean, Mayo talks about fundamentals, and he talked about it at halftime. There are no fundamentals with this defense right now. I thought that they were terrible from a fundamental standpoint. Offensively, look, they are what they are. They're not very good. There's not a lot of talent there. I feel bad for Caden Wallace.
Yeah.
I said all spring I thought he can play left tackle. I still think he can, but he's out of position there. He doesn't have the length. He doesn't have the athleticism to be a natural left tackle. He's probably better off in the NFL playing inside at guard. Maybe he can play right tackle, but you've seen it with Onwenu too. That lack of length is starting to come into play a little bit for both those guys. But I don't care who's playing quarterback for you at this point. They can't protect their quarterback. And, you bring up their game plan. Yeah, I thought their game plan sucked. I thought AVP did a pretty good job the first 2 weeks in terms of game planning the Bengals and the Seahawks. I thought this game plan sucked. You had to know going into this game, it's your only primetime game of the season. You had to know that running the football, keeping Aaron Rodgers and company off the field had to be a priority. And they fell behind early, and it almost seemed like he panicked and started trying to throw the ball. And I think that's a mistake. With this offensive line, your passing game is really limited. I guess if there was one silver lining is that they did make a concerted effort to get Pop Douglas involved. They got him touches in a variety of ways. But overall, I mean, it's a bad combination when your offense isn't very good. And now all of a sudden your defense, which is supposed to be your calling card, it's supposed to be your strength, all of a sudden they're not very good. Now, if you combine those two things, this season could be a lot worse than we thought.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic to me because all the things they did well against Cincinnati, they did poorly tonight. And it's only been a couple weeks, right, guy? But it was all those things. The tackling stands out to me because that's just fundamental stuff. It's free extra yards. And offensively, like you brought up Caden Wallace, I don't even want to criticize him. I kind of felt bad for him. Like his first ever start at left tackle. I mean, this is a guy who played just under 2,300 snaps at Penn State, all at right tackle. He hasn't obviously played left tackle in the NFL. So his first ever start at left tackle in college or the pros is on a short week against the Jets with a not good offense around him. I mean, that's just a brutal spot. And I didn't even think they helped him out enough. I'm not saying they never did, but I would have been helping him out all the time if I could. And he's got a guard next to him who's a backup as well. I mean, it's just a brutal spot for Caden Wallace to be in tonight. And he didn't play that well. But again, I think that was more about the spot he was in. And it was a kind of unfair to him. But yeah, just bad football. And you mentioned Demario Douglas, John, and he was a bright spot, but still Jalen Polk, basically no impact. Tyquan Thornton drew the one penalty down the sideline. Other than that, no impact. Hunter Henry limited it. Like that was the thing. Hunter Henry had a big impact against Seattle. Nobody else did anything. Tonight, Demario Douglas had a big impact and nobody else really did anything. So it's like they're getting one guy to have an impact and then nobody else.
Lauren Gaudette joins the show. I usually hate Thursday night games, and with how fickle the NFL is on a short week, I'm not surprised of how badly Pat's played, but no Bentley, and it seems to completely upset the entire defense. We'll put her other comment on the screen since we don't want Stone to disappear on us here. And how long before Van Pelt decides to change something instead of going 5-man pass pro? Thanks for checking in, Lauren. Appreciate it as always. Yeah, I mean, look, obviously they're going to miss Bentley. He's one of your best defensive players. He's one of your leaders. But this was more about Bentley tonight. Even if Bentley plays in this game, the way they played from a fundamental standpoint, there was no way they were going to get the necessary stops to win this game. And I think this is going to be a long film session. It is. I think it's going to be a long film session in position groups. I think it's going to be a long film session when they watch this as a defensive group. I think there's a lot there that needs to be fixed. The benefit of playing the Thursday night game is you do have the extra 3 days on the back end. I think it'll be good for these guys to get some rest. But I also think these coaches need to get in the office bright and early during this next 10 days, and they need to figure some stuff out. Because right now, when you look at this team and where they're at, fundamentally, they're not a good football team. And every coach in America at every level stresses fundamentals. But this is stuff that you need to be able to do at every level of football to have success, especially in the NFL. And the fact that, again, this is supposed to be your calling card, your strength, and you're playing with poor fundamentals like that, it's just not good. Speaking of the receivers, you mentioned Douglas, 7 catches, 69 yards. He led the way. Jalen Polk, 2 for 13. Hunter Henry had 109 yards receiving on Sunday, 2 for 9. I mean, collectively, they had 120 yards receiving. I mean, look, it is what it is. It's a combination. Offensively, you don't have a good offensive line. You have a limited skill group. It's going to be hard to score points all year for this team.
Yeah, and I felt like, and I'm curious if you two saw this as well, slow to adjust tonight from the coaching staff. It felt like defensively, they were trying to bring some pressure early, and they were having more success playing coverage, and it took them a long time to just play more coverage and only rush 4 guys. Whereas the same thing happened against Seattle. They kept bringing pressure even later in the game when it wasn't working. And I know they've been having trouble generating pressure, but when you're having more success playing coverage, I just kind of stick to that. And then offensively, it felt like play action in the game wasn't working that well, and they were trying to throw the ball too much and just very slow to adjust to want to run the ball. They really never got into running the ball more. I mean, Stevenson's fumble was a bad fumble, but that was only his 6th carry of the game. Like, it just felt like offensively, defensively, way too slow to make adjustments for this coaching staff as the game progressed.
Yeah, I agree. And when it comes to, sort of just a lack of discipline as well, you saw guys flying in to the backfield, reading plays, but overrunning it, just completely whiffing on plays. And what stood out to me is the lack of tackling from the linebacker group when Dante Hightower is one of your coaches. Like, that's stunning to me to a certain extent. And same thing, having Gerard Mayo as a head coach. And then just to kind of further expand on the lack of discipline, some of the penalties, like the one by Tavai,
The
it looked
Tavai,
like
that was
Brock
brutal.
Lesnar. He literally looked like Brock Lesnar in the suplex. So it's just, you guys have mentioned it, the lack of fundamentals, just overall discipline is stunning to me. And then on offense, I'm sure we're going to get to it, but throwing Drake May in there was wild to me. I'm just looking at the quotes on Twitter real quick, and when he was asked if he's going to, make a QB change, Mayo said, "I don't know. We will talk about it every single week. We'll get together as a coaching staff and see where that goes." How you can get that out of tonight, I don't know, when it was just one drive, but it feels like he's in over his head right now. That's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, I couldn't disagree more with that. He's not in over his head, man. It's not a good football team. It's easy to pile on him, but it's just it's dumb. It's dumb to pile on him. I think it's ridiculous. I don't think he has a roster that's good enough to win with. So let's not sit here and put this on Mayo and say, oh, it's Mayo's fault. He's a first-year head coach. What do you want from him? They don't have a left tackle. There isn't one anywhere within this vicinity. There isn't a left tackle around the Patriots facility within hundreds of miles. So what do you want him to do? They don't have a good roster. Now, you could say that's on Elliott Wolf. That's on them. They tried to spend money. They picked the players this offseason. They tried to spend money. People didn't want to take their money. They didn't want to come here. Remember now, people didn't want to come here because A, it's a rebuilding situation. B, there's uncertainty at quarterback. And C, the state of Massachusetts sucks because of their stupid taxes. So guys don't want to lose money to come here to play in a bad situation. So I think it's easy to pile on him, but at the end of the day, it's 3 games in. I mean, let's give the guy a break. I mean, we're already blaming him. I mean, you don't have a left tackle. Your receiving core lacks a playmaker. And please don't tell me Pop Douglas. I'm tired of hearing about Pop Douglas being this all-world elite playmaker. He's not, okay? He's a nice little slot receiver who in a good situation is your 4th receiver, all right? So let's not sit here now and say, oh, well, Mayo could have done this, Mayo could have done that. Sure. Could he have handled the media better? I agree. We all universally agree that he hasn't done a good job handling the media. And to your point, and I do agree with you, Kevin, I wouldn't put that out there tonight. I mean, I don't know what makes him think that.
That's what I was getting at.
Right. But I guess my point is, you're right from the standpoint of I don't think a quarterback change is going to change anything. This team is not very good. It doesn't matter. And now the problem is, as we've said all along so far on the show, now your defense, which was supposed to be the one thing you can count on, the one thing you can lean on, they want to keep you in games. They don't look like they're going to keep you in games. Now, that could all change. the NFL is a week-to-week league. But, again, when you look at this football team, fellas, they're going to be picking in the top 5 next April. There's no way around it. I don't see a cure-all here. There isn't one. You're going to get Kendrick Bourne back? Yeah, he'll help. He's a nice player. But again, your offensive line is below average. Your quarterback play is below average. And then defensively, the injuries are going to become a problem now. Peppers is limping around. He hurt his ankle. White got hurt at the end of the game. Bentley's done for the year. Barmore's probably done for the year. You're down a lot of key guys. It's going to rear its ugly head.
Yeah, I think the headline there is one of the owners of the New England Football Journal just saying Massachusetts sucks. I think we'll put that in a promo.
Hey, man,
yeah.
I'm just saying, I've talked to people that, and let me clarify that. I've talked to people that have said a big reason free agents don't want to sign here is that jock tax. They get killed on taxes. And Belichick talked about it a few weeks back on Pat McAfee. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying, do I think there are things about Massachusetts that are great? Yeah, absolutely. Do I think there are things about Massachusetts that suck? Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to shy away from that. Sorry, folks, but that's just the reality.
So I think, I don't know if I'd go as far to say Mayo's over his head, but I think we are seeing these rookie head coach growing pains, which we've all talked about, right? Like, I mean, we were at camp, like the Judon thing, that was, even the Jalen Reagor thing, which I know was a smaller deal this week, but these are kind of things you see, or him saying, well, there's a QB competition. Well, there's not. And then all of a sudden tonight, 3 games in, we're going to evaluate, as we go, whatever the quote was, Kevin, I know you read it there, but I think these are, and even tonight, it felt like the Patriots were not as ready to go as we're used to them being on a short week. I mean, let's not forget, this was a worse roster last year that went into Pittsburgh in December and won on a Thursday night. So it just, again, I'm not saying I wouldn't go as far as to say he's in over his head, but I think these are some of those rookie growing pains. And John, I think you bring up a great point on the injuries, because one of the things that separates good teams from bad teams in the NFL is depth. And we can sit here and say Christian Gonzalez is a great player and the Patriots have some other great players on defense. But I mean, Juwan Bentley gets hurt and you're relying on Raekwon McMillan and Joe Giles Harris, who are okay players, but they're not anywhere near the level of Bentley. And if Peppers is out, then you're relying on Mapu, who I think has a lot of great traits, but hasn't really played much, right? So there's this depth that, I mean, City So gets hurt. You have Michael Jordan there at left guard, and you have a rookie at left tackle in his first ever start. So I think that's one of the issues that you look forward to. They got to play San Francisco, and then Miami's on their backup quarterback, but they still have explosive playmakers there. Then Houston, if you start to suffer injuries, then your lack of depth is really going to, I think, give you some problems in the next month or so.
So let me clarify. In over his head probably is strong. But again, why put that out there tonight? And
I would agree with that, Stone, too. That's why are you putting that out there?
It feels like he's adding more to his plate week by week by saying too much. And you mentioned the injuries. That's only going to make it worse, because what can him and Elliot Wolf do? You're already almost in October in 2 weeks, but there's only so much this team can
not
do.
Much. You're not going to improve the roster.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So, over his head was probably a little bit strong, but I feel like he's adding more and more to his plate by the week. His GM certainly hasn't helped him, but there's now a steep hill for him to climb in terms of, I don't want to say gaining the trust back of the locker room, because it's way too early for that, and I get it. But at some point, results are going to, if the results aren't there, guys are going to start saying, hey, what the hell is going on? So that's sort of my worry, is if he does keep talking himself into corners, how does the locker room respond to that?
I wouldn't get hung up on the locker room. He's not going to lose the locker room. This organization knows where they are. Look, every guy to a man in that locker room is going to tell you they expected to win this year. Of course they're going to say that. Why wouldn't they say that? I mean, John, you and I have coached for a long time. We've coached teams that aren't very good. Even those teams said, hey, we expect to compete this year. It is what it is. That's what they're going to say. That's the standard company line. I'm not afraid of him losing the locker room. I think he's got a pretty good hold of the locker room. I do agree that he's got to do a better job of handling the media and the things that he says. Like the comment tonight, I think to your point, yes, he's putting himself in a corner because now what it's going to do, it's going to lead to speculation for the next 7 to 8 days. Are they going to make a quarterback change? First of all, they're not. I have a hard time believing that they're going to make a quarterback change going into San Francisco. Now, could they do it after this game? Yeah. I mean, I think when we all adjusted our Drake May is going to play timelines, I think we all said week 5 or 6. I think if you're going to see him, that's when you're going to see him. But I think, look, at the end of the day, one of the things I think they have to consider here is it worth playing the kid with this offensive line? It's that bad. And, I had, a buddy of mine, Corey Bailey, who used to do the show with us, Corey reached out and he's like, why aren't they helping Wallace? And I'm like, dude, your guess is as good as mine.
I don't know, man.
Right. And part of it is, and I say this all the time, it's the NFL. Offensive coordinators in the NFL are obsessed with getting 5 guys out. God forbid that they formation protection. God forbid that they use the backs, both their backs in protection. God forbid they use a tight end and a back in protection and late release them. I mean, it's ridiculous to me how little they try to help themselves in protection. They're stubborn. Their attitude is, if these 5 guys are good enough to play in this league, they gotta be able to play in this league. Well, that's great, except the problem is your quarterback's getting his ass kicked because he's hanging in the pocket waiting on a 15 to 20-yard dig to come open so that he can drive that thing through the hole. All the while he's got anywhere from 3 to 6 guys trying to take his head off. So, again, I think that's part of the issue here. But I'd be concerned playing Drake May right now with this offensive line. You saw it tonight. He plays one series. He hit the ground like 4 times. Got sacked twice, hit the ground 4 times. Like that's what you're going to get on a series to series basis if you throw this kid in there. And you saw his first pass, man. It's not the preseason anymore. It's games faster now. Your processing better speed up, because if it doesn't, you can't be out there throwing those short on lollipops on hitches. You got to drive that ball, because if you don't, you're going to be chasing the back of some guy's jersey.
So why tonight, though? No, just why tonight? I
think they want to get him a series and get him some work.
Okay. But look, I'm okay. All right, you want to get him a series? You're throwing on his first play. You threw a lot on that series. Like, they threw too much on that series. I mean, to me,
he felt that hit. Yeah, the one hit. He felt that hit when he spun around and then.
Yeah, he got smoked.
He got smoked. And that's where football is a different game, man. There's no boards there like hockey to break your fall.
And
different deal.
In the short term, I think if they play Drake May against San Francisco, a team that has Nick Bosa, Fred Warner, and Javon Hargrave up front, that would be a massive mistake in all caps. A massive mistake.
Yep. Couldn't agree with you more.
Before the season, I was like, all right, maybe week 9. And then I saw Drake May in practice. Then I saw him in the preseason get a little better. I'm like, all right, maybe week 5 against Miami. And then you get Houston week 6. And I'm still okay with Drake May's timeline. My problem is this O-line has been so bad. And now that it's banged up, I would worry about playing him in week 5 or 6. And it's not even his development. But think about Jacoby Brissett was sacked 5 times. Could have been sacked maybe 8. And John, you and I talked about this after the Seattle game. Brissett sacked 3 times, could have been 7 or 8. Like, that's going to happen to Drake May, because for every one play he makes scrambling around that maybe Brissett wouldn't make, he's going to take a sack or 2, and he's going to get hit hard, especially coming off the blind side. So I just really worry about putting him in that position. And that's just such a precarious spot, because you can't put a rookie in, have him fail for a few weeks and pull him out. Like, that doesn't work in the NFL, and put him back in later. And then God forbid he gets really hurt. I mean, it's just, to me, again, I think if in the short term you play him against San Francisco, that's a massive mistake. In the longer term, I'd still wait. Again, it's more about the O-line than anything else. And let's also not excuse, outside of Demario Douglas, not a lot of guys getting open either to throw to.
So, John, just to your point, I think I saw a number tonight. He's up to either 25 or 26 QB hits already in 3 games. We might end up seeing Drake May before anybody even wants to. Because, again, there was a time tonight where he stayed down. And we talked about this, John Sarnides, on Monday, where there's been times he's struggled to get up already this season. And at some point, he said earlier this week, I'm a big boy. I can take the hits. At some point, he might not be able to. That's how bad this is. So I'm with you. I'm out on playing Drake at all this year at this point, unless this whole line improves, obviously. But unfortunately, I have a feeling we're going to forcefully see him sooner than we want to.
Yeah, no, I
Yeah,
think
a good
that's
point.
fair. Yeah, Lauren checks in. I do think Brissett is the guy going forward with this roster, but I don't think he's going to last into week 5. He seems hurt every time he goes down. Yeah. Well,
I'm having visions of Nick Bosa coming off the edge and just boom. Like, I hate to say it, but I'm just like, that just keeps going through. Or Fred Warner on an A-gap blitz, just boom.
Yeah. And again, it's part of the problem here is that you're kind of stuck with what you have. I mean, the next two guys are Thomas. Thomas was the next guy. He played a bunch tonight. But, I mean, I just think for me, you have to start to think about adjusting the scheme. And this defense has no room for error. Last year, they played at a pretty high level, and they were relatively healthy outside of Gonzalez and Judon. They're not as healthy as they were a year ago at this time. And I think the other thing is you can't fall behind if you're this Patriots team. That's what I mean by this defense has no margin for error. They've got to play well from start to finish if they're going to keep this team in games. Because if they give up an early score, if it's 7-0, 10-0, you have no margin for error. 10-0 to this Patriots team might as well be 21-0. You might as well be, an old school triple option team. You're done. You're toast. You're not coming back. It's over. Play out the rest of the game. Hit the showers. Hit the car. Go home. Call it a night. Because that's the reality. They're just not good enough. They're not built to play from behind. And even if you get Kendrick Bourne back, he'll help at some point, but it's not going to be enough. So, again, I think now when you look at what this team looked like tonight, and again, it's a small sample size, but when you look at what this team looked like tonight, now you have to wonder, can this team even win 4 more games? I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be hard.
It was like 14-3 at halftime tonight. Felt like it was 28-3.
Right.
Like, it's just, again, that's what it felt like. And look, can this team win 4 or 5 more games? I think they can. And I think part of it is, like, you're going to play a Tennessee team that's bad. Maybe you steal one division win. Maybe Arizona fall. Because remember, Kyler Murray, the new Call of Duty, comes out in late October. So maybe they start to fall off. You beat it. So I think there's a ways to get 4 or 5 more wins. But I think you look at it, what they did against Cincinnati, and you and I talked about this on the post game, John, that will win you a handful of games. It's not going to win you a bunch, and it gives you no margin for error. Let's not forget, they forced 2 turnovers in that game that led to points. They didn't force any turnovers against Seattle, didn't force any against the Jets, didn't get those extra possessions in a short field. You don't win those games. So it's like they can win that way against Cincinnati, sure, but how many times are you going to be able to replicate that exact formula where the other team, you catch them, they're not playing well, you do all these things right, you force 2 turnovers. I mean, it's not an easy mix to get together 7-8 times a year.
The only thing I'll say about tonight that gives me a slight bit of hope is the fact that it was A, the Jets home opener, and B, just, it's a tough spot. It's a Thursday night. You're going on the road. So, yes, they no-showed, and it's no excuses, but the Jets were clearly juiced, maybe more than they would be on a Sunday. So I'm holding my hope out on that a little bit, but it's a no-show across the board tonight. So again, you hope that it was just sort of a bad spot, and they're able to turn the page and use this 10-day break to kind of fix some things, but it's worrisome to say the least.
Yeah, I don't buy any of that. I just don't, man. They're not very good. I mean, we can sit here and talk about what Mayo said, what he didn't say, showing up, not showing up, Thursday night, Wednesday night, Sunday night, Friday night. It doesn't matter. Football is the ultimate talent sport, more so than basketball. okay? Because in basketball, if you have one guy that can average 30 a game, he can carry you. And in basketball, you have runs. There's no runs in football. If one team gains some momentum early, 9 out of 10 times, it ain't going back to the other sideline. Very rarely do you see that. And it's the ultimate talent sport. If the other team's better, as long as their coaching doesn't get in the way, they're going to win. They're going to win 8 out of 10 times. So I think tonight is a prime example of that. They have Aaron Rodgers. The Patriots don't. They have a better offensive line. Their defense is better than the Patriots. Pound for pound, it's better than the Patriots. And they have a way better skill group. So, I mean, they should win. The fact that they didn't win by more is remarkable to me. It speaks to just how inept they are from a coaching standpoint. Anybody that knows, I'm not a solid guy. I think if the Jets really want to capitalize on this Aaron Rodgers window, they probably should have gone in another direction. And it may be the difference between Joe Douglas keeping his job and not keeping his job after this season. But for me, I think this comes down to talent. Look, Patriots dominated them for years. Why? Because they were better and better coached. End of story. And that's what tonight is about. They flipped the script. They're better than the Patriots now. And they took care of business.
Yeah, and I think, look, it was a tough spot for the Patriots on the road on a Thursday night, but at the same time, the Jets were in San Francisco 2 weeks ago and also had to go to Tennessee last week. So they've been on the road in decent-sized trips, especially that San Fran one. So, look, I think, though, I think Aaron Rodgers was a little better than you gave him credit for tonight. I don't think he was elite MVP Aaron Rodgers, but I do think he was really good.
Yeah, he was good.
And I think he was.
They made it sound like he was the Aaron Rodgers of 4 years ago.
Yeah, I wouldn't go that far.
Right.
But
I do think
yes, the mobility was a little surprising to me. And I think the way he looked off some of those backers and safeties, the Patriots didn't see that in week 1 with Burrow because Burrow wasn't fully back yet. And they didn't see it with Geno Smith either, I don't think. So that was something they had to kind of deal with that maybe, I don't want to say shocked them a little, but that was just something they haven't quite had to deal with yet. One other thing for me too, and I think this is like when you look at, okay, what can they fix? Jets had 40 minutes time of possession tonight. I mean, and look, I know time of possession, not always the be all end all. Like the Chiefs, a lot of times have been near the bottom of the league, but hey, they score touchdowns on 4-play drives. So it's a little different. A team like the Patriots, you got to sustain some drives. You got to hold on to the ball a little bit more. And for this defense, I mean, they were on the field. What was it? 35 minutes against the Seahawks. And then 4 days later, whatever it is, 40 minutes against the Jets. I mean, that's tough. That's a tough spot for the defense to be in, regardless of their own mistakes in itself. But that's one thing. They got to find a way to just string together some first downs and get that time. Because, again, it's not the be-all, end-all for every team, but for a team that's built like the Patriots, they got to improve that time of possession number. It's killing them, and I think it's just leading to their defense getting worn out.
2 other things that are becoming more and more of an issue. The run defense, again, gave up 133 yards tonight on the ground and third downs. They were 2 for 11 on offense, but the Jets were 10 for 15. I'm pretty sure Seattle was, I want to say like 11 for 18 or something like that last week. You got to get off the field too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that statistic more than anything else speaks to the defense is now all of a sudden a liability, especially on the back end. People kept mentioning this tonight on X, and I think there's some truth to it, that they're a corner short. And we kind of felt going into the season, you knew who your top 3 were. You knew it was going to be Gonzalez, Jonathan Jones, Marcus Jones, but who was it going to be after that? And it begs the question, did they neglect an area that they needed to upgrade in? I mean, and look, they did the right thing. The offense should have been the focal point of this draft. But you wonder with the cap space they had, could they have possibly brought in – I've said this all the time. I've said this for a long time. I like veteran defensive backs in this league. I don't want to rely on rookies that much. You can sell me on a boundary corner or a field corner being a rookie and starting for you. I'm okay with that. But your nickel and dime guys, your top backup, those guys, I like veterans there. And I kind of feel like they might have dropped the ball there. They take Marcellus Dial in the 6th round. He had an camp. He's been okay so far, primarily a special teamer. But, I like that they gave Alex Austin and Marco Wilson a chance, but not sure those guys are the guys. And So I think there's some truth to that they could be a corner short. I mean, you're seeing it now. We're living in an age now, we have been for the last 20 years, where nickel is your base now. So you need to have 4 corners in this league if you want to have a legitimate shot at being able to defend people on the back end. I think they're one guy short.
Yeah, and Jonathan Jones is my favorite player on the team. I think he had a sneaky below average game tonight too. Like I know he had the one pass break up in the end zone, but there was some missed tackles in there. He did give up the back shoulder fade ball too. I think is sneaky, and that's the issue. Like that's a great player. One of your most, if he has a Met game, I mean, you're relying on Alex Austin, who misses a tackle and scored the touchdown is scored. So yeah, I mean, I think it's something that I still think the secondary is good, but that's also part of, like I mentioned, the coaching being slow to adjusting. A lot of times we saw Raekwon McMillan trying to cover guys in space, and I'm like, why not just go with an extra defensive back there, and just a little more? Because the Jets were able to run the ball, I get it, but there were so many open holes in zones. I mean, you drafted Marte Mapu a couple years ago. You have all these defensive backs, and yet you still have Raekwon McMillan covering a bunch of space in the open field. I didn't love that.
Not the best night for Christian Gonzalez either. It wasn't, alarmingly bad, but the Garrett Wilson play, it would have been negated, but he fell down. And then you had the touchdown as well. Now look, it was a great play, but he's been good, but I feel like, they're relying on him to be even better than he is as well.
Yeah, and again, I think at the end of the day, it's also a matchup league, and right now I do think that their secondary did struggle tonight. Make no mistake about it, their secondary struggled the last 2 games, but last week I feel it was more of a disguising too much and not communicating enough. I think tonight it was just simply they did not play well. Yeah. And I think that the Jets had some matchups there. You had Mike Williams on Jonathan Jones. Gonzalez struggled with Garrett Wilson, which I think a lot of people are going to struggle with him. He's a terrific route runner who knows how to create separation at the top of routes. And again, Aaron Rodgers, I thought he played well. He wasn't the Aaron Rodgers of his prime, but he was pretty good, and he got the ball where he needed to. And again, I think he exposed some things that the Patriots defense was trying to do that they couldn't do. And again, you hope that some of this is what you guys said, that playing on a Thursday night, short turnaround, whatever. But unfortunately, the beginning part of this year's schedule is very unforgiving. Oh, yeah. So there's no wiggle room there. I mean, they're going to either steal a couple of games here and keep their head above water, or they're going to take it on the chin, and it's going to be a long year, even though the schedule does get easier, or a little easier, I should say, in the middle to back end. You got Tennessee and Chicago there, which – those 2 teams are better on paper than the Patriots, too. I'm not sure I chalk those up as wins. But certainly tonight was discouraging because, again, you walked away from the first 2 games saying, okay, this team might not be too bad. You beat Cincinnati on the road. Could have very easily beaten Seattle in the home opener. They should do all right against this Jets team, even though they have a healthy Aaron Rodgers, and they didn't. They totally no-showed. And I think that a lot of it is matchup related, but I think ultimately – Mayo and this staff need to get back to the fundamentals, because that's everything in football. I don't care how many plays you run, how many plays you have on your play sheet. It doesn't matter. If you can't do the fundamental things of the game, like any sport, you can't win.
Yeah, and your point on the matchups, like I think also just what the Jets do well is a bad matchup for the Patriots. Like they have a great pass rushing defensive line, and the Patriots struggle to pass block. They have a good cover secondary, and the Patriots don't really have guys that can separate from man coverage very well. So like what they do is a bad matchup for the Patriots on top of it. And unfortunately, San Francisco is exactly the same. I mean, you're talking about the Jets tonight. Multiple big receivers gave some of the Patriots shorter DBs problems. Even without Deebo Samuel, San Fran has multiple big receivers. They have a great pass rushing defensive line. So it's just unfortunately, and we know they're going to be well coached with Shanahan and that group there. So it's just, I think the story from the Jets tonight is a very similar story to San Francisco in 10 days. Just the way what they do well matches up with what the Patriots do poorly.
Yeah, and I said that to someone today. They said, it's just the Jets. I said, it's not just the Jets.
No, it's
This
different
is a
now.
bad matchup on paper.
Yeah. Oh
When
yeah.
you match these teams up, they do not match well. And the things that the Jets do well, the Patriots don't do well, and
Yeah.
that proved to be the difference.
CJ Mosley didn't even play, and like
No.
it's still a bad matchup.
Yep.
My one question for you guys, you can say it's fundamentals. At what point is it on the coaching, and then at what point is it on the players? Like I know there's sort of an even divide there, but at some point you're a professional player, right? Like at some point, when is it on them?
I don't think that has anything to do with it. I mean, I think the bottom line is you can sit here and tell yourself they're a professional player all you want. It was fundamentals tonight. Bad run fits, bad pursuit angles, bad tackling.
So
yeah, that happens at all levels of football.
Yeah, I'd put like some of the actual form.
I think both sides, I would say, have play.
Yeah, because like some of the actual form tackling, like you're a professional defensive back or linebacker, you should wrap a guy up. You know what I like that. But then when you see a bunch of guys do it, I'm like, okay, so are they being told in like why is this being emphasized correctly in practice? Or like John mentioned, the bad run fits, like that to me is more of a coaching issue. Or like when you're throwing the ball a bunch of times with Drake May and he's getting hit 4 times, like that's a coaching issue. You know what I mean? But Drake May making the bad decision on that throw that was almost picked, to me, that's on May and his decision. Again, rookie first throw ever. I'm not crushing him. I'm just to answer your question. I think it's a little bit of both, and that makes it a little bit harder, right? Because if it was just a bunch of guys out of position or doing the wrong thing, we'd say, hey, it's a coaching issue. Or if it was just a bunch of guys dropping passes or not holding the ball, we'd say, hey, it's a player issue. I think right now the problem is we got some blame in both areas, and both have quite a bit to correct.
Yeah, I think it's important not to get hung up on that they're pros. I mean, I get it. Yes, you've gotten to that level in your career. You should be able to do these things. And I understand that. I totally get that. I just think at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I think it's a combination of obviously you lose 24-3. You're never really in the game. Coaching's a part of the problem. Yes, they did not do a good job coaching this football team tonight. But I do think the other part of the problem is the players have to own it, especially on defense. They did not play well tonight, and again, not to beat the dead horse here, it is fundamentals. This is not a good enough football team that they can be fundamentally flawed and win games. They can't overcome bad
That's
fundamentals.
A good point too. Yeah, like some teams can get away with it, and then some. Not that it's ever a good thing, but some teams can get away with it, and they're not one of those teams.
Right, and that's what it comes down to. I used to. And again, I was a high school head coach. I wasn't an NFL head coach, so there's a big difference there. But that was one of my key talking points every year. I mean, you're going to make it harder on yourselves to win if we're bad fundamentally, because we are not good enough to close that gap. We have to be on top of things fundamentally and from a detail standpoint, because if we are, then and I'm going through puberty, if we are, we give ourselves the best chance to win. But when your fundamentals are shit, well, then you know what? Your performance is going to be shit. That's what I used to say to my guys all the time. And at the end of the day, we're not going to win many games because, again, we're not good enough to bridge that gap. And the thing with football is what's so unique about football is it's not like other sports where think about a stance. I always tell people what separates football from other sports other than the physicality. Well, first of all, it's the most unique stance in sports. You're getting into a 3-point stance. You don't do that really in any other sport, or a 2-point stance where you're slouched over. There's so many aspects to the game that make it so uniquely different than these other sports. But I think people need to realize where football gets hard, and this matters in a game like we saw tonight, is that more than any other sport, these 11 guys need to be on the same page, fundamentally and mentally. They need to be able to play the game the right way, and they need to be able to communicate the game the right way. And no other sport is like that. LeBron can take a game over in the NBA, and everybody else just gets out of the way and he plays iso ball. Okay, your goalie can steal you a game in hockey. Your pitcher can dominate for 8 innings. Football is different. If 1 or 2 guys aren't doing what they're supposed to, it's a coordinated effort. You're in for a long night. You're in for a long night if all 11 guys aren't doing the same thing.
Yeah, and like one example to like Kevin, your question. So like Caden Wallace got called for those back-to-back holding penalties in the second half, but that actually took the Patriots out of field goal range. Like the second one, okay? So he's isolated on a clear passing down, and
By
they
the way,
don't
the
give him.
first one was an awful call, but anyway.
So, but the second one, so he's isolated on a passing down, and they don't give him help. Like that part of it's a coaching issue.
Against a
But
wide 5 technique, which you have to figure he's going to struggle with.
but then his actual technique when he takes both his arms and basically wraps around the shoulders of the defensive end, which is a clear holding penalty and is going to get flagged 10 times out of 10. Well, that's kind of on Caden Wallace too. So it's like that's the issue. Like the coaches put him in a bad spot there, but then he used poor technique and got flagged for a penalty. So like that's the thing. Like if he had help there, Kevin, and the guys just blew it, then you'd be like, all right, well, it's just the player. Or if he didn't have help, but he held up, we'd say, well, he should still maybe have some help there. That's not great. But that's the issue is like it was and that's just one example, but that stood out to me as like they put him in a bad spot and then he made it worse.
So I completely get what you guys are saying, and it all makes sense. My only thought is it's week 3. So are they tuning them out already? If it's that bad and that many guys are making consistent mistakes, well, then and again, I get
I just think they're not good enough
You know
yet.
what-
Like
you know what
even
I'm
like
asking?
Caden, I get what you're asking, but like,
they're not
Yeah.
tuning him out. They're just
but
not
like
that good.
Caden Wallace is just a rookie in his first ever start. Like I don't expect the guy. They should not
Right.
expect that guy to be good. You know what I mean? Jacoby
Right.
Brissett,
Playing
he's a
left
heck of
tackle. It's his first career start as a left tackle.
yeah. Like and Jacoby Brissett's a heck of a lot better than Mac Jones last year, but it's still like a journeyman Jacoby Brissett, right? Like you can only so like I think that to me, Kev, is the bigger like when Kyle Duggar and Christian Gonzalez have the miscommunication and DK Metcalf scores a 56-yard touchdown, like that's a freaking problem. But like if Caden Wallace has a bad time tonight, like that to me is just like this is the roster you have. Like, and there's only so much that I think you can do in some of those situations.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can make the argument that they might be tuning them out 10 weeks from now, but I don't think they're tuning them out. I think they are what they are. I mean, when you get an illegal formation penalty on your tackle, that just means one thing. I mean, people sit there and they give these guys crap about not knowing how to line up. No, what it means is they're trying to jump set the guy across from them because they know I'm not good enough to cut the edge off with him. He's going to beat me and get on my hip, and I almost swore there. I'm screwed, and it's over. My quarterback's going to end up on his back. So oftentimes at any level of football, when a guy misaligns like that as a left tackle, it's because he's trying to he's trying to cut the edge off, but he's cheating and he gets caught. So it wasn't a point of emphasis in the league for years, and guys would cheat and they would position themselves in where they weren't, it wasn't an illegal formation. They weren't fully in the backfield, but they can jump set those speed rushers and give themselves a chance. They don't have that chance now. It's a point of emphasis. And now it's more about your physical ability. And this is where length comes in. Yeah. I do think the kid can play left tackle as a backup rotational guy. I think if you want to get the most out of him, he's probably better as a guard. But the lack of length comes into play there because if you're a longer guy, you don't have to cheat as much now. You can cut that edge off and force a guy like Will McDonald to have to stick his foot in the ground, redirect, and get into a secondary move. And once he does that now, as long as you're protecting your inside with a heavy inside foot, now you can pop, recoil, reset, and now he's screwed. You've stoned him. It's over. That rep is over for him. You won. So, I think so much of it is that, too, that he's trying to get an advantage and he can't. Lauren checks back in. I feel it's more unrealistic expectations or questionable evaluation. Probably not, she says in parentheses, from the staff, or they forced to push the timeline up on guys like Caden Wallace. Well, yeah, they were forced to push the timeline.
They had no choice.
They don't have anybody else. Yeah, they don't have a choice. They don't have anybody else. Vidarian Lowe is down. Chuks Okorafor, I don't know what happened with him.
Gone. Yeah.
So, I mean, again, I think at the end of the day, as we wrap up the show here, this is why there's going to be a lot of conversation. If they fall out of this thing soon, in the next handful of weeks, we're going to start looking towards the draft. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to want the Will Johnsons and the Travis Hunters of the world if they end up with a top 3, top 5 pick. But I'm telling you, it is malpractice when it comes to the development of Drake May if you don't take an offensive tackle with your first-round pick. I would take an offensive tackle with my first 2 picks. I mean, it's got to be your number one priority this offseason. They know that. We're not telling them something they don't already know. But man, and I know Travis Hunter can change the complexion of an organization with his playmaking ability, but who cares what he can do if you can't protect your quarterback? You're not going to be able to get him the ball anyway. All right, final thoughts here as we wrap it up.
Is this the point in the show where I point out that the Matt Patricia coached offense had almost twice as many points through 3 games as the Alex Van Pelt offense? Or
But
should
how
I
did the
leave
Bill
that?
O'Brien offense
Yeah,
stack up?
so maybe I should leave that one alone. But yeah, look, I think it was a bad.
Wasn't as bad as people thought, man.
Yeah, just change the quarterback, and funny what happens. But look, it was a bad matchup for the Patriots tonight in the Jets and what they do well, but I think it also showed Patriots have a long way to go, right? Like offensively, maybe a little bit longer defensively than we expected, but they have a long way to go. We've been talking about this for 6 months, that everything they do this year is more about 2025 than next year. And as fun as that Cincinnati win was, this was kind of another reminder of that. Doesn't mean they can't get better. Doesn't mean they can't fix some of these things, but I just think we have to be cognizant of there's a real ceiling there, and this is more about next year than this year.
My 2 biggest takeaways are, one, I'm not sure I can handle draft talk in October. We did it last year.
I can talk draft literally every day.
Yeah, I get Stone's point though. Yeah, I get Stone's point though.
And I'm now very curious to see how Gerard Mayo handles the next 10 days. Because we're all going to, be asking the same question. Are we going to see Drake May? And I'm with you guys. I don't think we should, but he's going to now have to navigate more questions about several different things, that being the lead one. And I'm not sure he can or is ready to. So it'll be a very interesting next week or so to see how he handles everything going on right now.
Could have very easily said Jacoby's our guy and left it there, but he likes to mix things up, I suppose. But look, getting back to the draft talk, this team is sitting there at 1-5, 2-6. It's going to start becoming more and more of a reality sooner than it did last year.
Yeah.
And and that's just the way it is. I mean, it's something that's really a year-round topic now. It's not something that's strictly
when you're a bad football team.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the reality of it. We
hate
have
to say it, but
that's the reality of it. We have to accept what they are, which is not a very good football team. Yeah. And this is going to take longer than we thought to fix. It's not going to happen overnight. And as much as, they pretty much just got rid of Bill and that was it. I mean, Bill knew there wasn't a lot in the cupboard, and you could tell by the way he's talking now as a member of the media. But I do think internally, I'm sure they know we're a ways away. Now, I think the one thing I'll say is this, and I'll close with this. They have invested long-term in a lot of these guys. So that part of it, I'm curious to see how it plays out, only because these guys are going to be a part of your future. A lot of them are going to be around here the next 2 to 4 years. So we'll see. But nonetheless, disappointing performance tonight. Patriots lose to the New York Jets 24-3. That'll do it for this episode of the Patriots post-game show. For John Lyons and Kevin Stone, I'm John Serenitas. We will be back with you a week from Sunday when the Patriots travel out to the Bay Area to take on the San Francisco 49ers. Until then, peace.